This is the lesson 14.4 video lessons on how to get any letter alone, solving for letters, which still is junk and divide. Let's take a look at example 1. Again, we're always going to start out with drawing the wall. Alright, so for this one, it says we're solving for t. Now remember, that's telling us what we want to get alone, which makes the other brackets or the other terms the junk. So here, the junk is 3v. No biggie, make it disappear. Subtract 3v from that side, whatever you do to one side, you do the other. We talked about this in the last video notes, where if you can't put them together, which clearly h's and v's cannot go together, you simply say it and write it sideways. So again, minus 4t, h minus 3v, write it sideways, h minus 3v. That takes care of the junk. Now divide. Fraction bar -4, and you can either do 2 fraction bars, but what a lot of teachers teach is one big giant fraction bar. So you would have a choice on this or this. Both are okay. But believe it or not, most teachers prefer the lazy way, meaning just one big divide sign, one big fraction bar. So at the final answer, you might as well get used to dividing by one big fraction bar. It's what they want. Let's take a look at example 2. So again, we draw the wall, and now we look for junk. Now remember, we're solving for h here. Is there any junk on this side of the wall? You can see right here there's no plus or minus signs, no extra terms, so there is no junk. Okay, so we go straight to divide. Now this looks crazy, but we're going to divide by whatever's in front of h. Remember, if this problem looked like this, you guys would all say, oh, divide by 3. It's the same concept. You're going to divide by whatever's in front of h. So in this case, we're going to divide by pi, and we're going to divide by r squared. Now that's as ugly as it gets, but we're going to follow our rules. Divide by what's in front of the letter we're trying to solve for. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Now look what cancels out. Pi's are gone, r squareds are gone, leaving with just h. And yes, it's ugly, but that's the answer. Again, stick to your rules, junk and divide. Let's take a look at example 3. Again, we're going to make sure we draw a wall, and we're going to look at what we're solving for. Now in this case, we're solving for a. Put an arrow above it just to remind yourself that's what you're trying to get alone. So again, we look for the junk. Now here we have those two pieces of junk. We've got the b squared, we've got the LH. Those are both considered junk. Now again, you can get rid of these in one step or 2 steps. I prefer just getting rid of it in one shot. How do we make a positive b squared disappear? Obviously, negative b squared. And over here, how do we make a negative LH disappear? Positive LH. And again, you can say add or subtract. We know the deal. Whatever you write on one side, you write on the other. Minus b squared plus LH, and we do our thing. Now again, we got rid of the junk, we got rid of the junk. So the only thing left over here is 2ba. On the other side, again, none of these are like terms, so we write it sideways. SA minus b squared plus LH. Just so you know, the order really doesn't matter. That takes care of the junk. Our second and last step is divide. Now remember, we're solving for a, so we have to divide by what's in front of a. The 2 and the b both have to be divided. Stick to your rules. Junk, divide. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Now remember, we're going to be lazy and just do one big giant fraction bar, 2b. You could do 3 separate 2b's. Goodbye, goodbye. And a equals this giant mess. But that's what solving for formulas and letters is all about. 2b. Okay, let's go back, take a look at example 4. Okay, let's stick with our rules. Draw the wall. We're supposed to solve for h. Now this is where it gets a little crazy. As soon as I see this fraction, I know that something's up. So what we have to do is remember back to our lessons where we talked about fractions. Remember, this 1/3 and this group of letters right here are really one fraction. The question is, does this belong to the top level or the bottom level? Remembering back to our lessons, we know that it's always the top. So I'm going to rewrite this as v equals the 1, shove the pi, the r squared, and the h to the top level, and the 3 on the bottom. Now remember, that's from the previous lesson, so that's not that big of a deal. Some of you are saying, do we have to write the 1? The answer is no. You could clearly make that an invisible 1. But for now, I'm going to leave it up there. Now again, every time I see fractions, I think cross multiply. So remember, anything can be put in over invisible 1. Okay? So you see fractions, we cross multiply. So let's start with this. 3 times v, 3 mashed with a v, 3v. 1 times anything is that same thing. Now this time I'm not going to write the invisible 1, but you guys know you could. Cross multiplication gets rid of fractions. Now that we've gotten rid of the fractions, we can solve for h. Remember, the rule is junk and divide. Is there any junk? The answer is no. So we go straight to divide. Fraction bar, pi's got to go, and r squared's got to go. Whatever I write on one side, I do the other. So our final answer is 3v over pi r squared. Again, that's all about as soon as you see a fraction, cross multiplication, and knowing that this group of letters right up there really belongs to the top level. So if you rewrite it, it becomes a little easier. All right, let's take a look at the final example. Okay, again, we're going to draw a wall. Right away, we see a fraction. Now the nice thing about this fraction is we don't have to worry about moving anything to the top level. We're just ready to go. So I'm going to put the t over invisible 1, and I'm going to start my cross multiplication. T times mashed with cm, t cm, equals 1 times e, e. Or you can put the 1 in front. Now, here we go. We're solving for m. There is no junk, so I go straight to divide. Divide by what's in front, t, c. Whatever you do to one side, you do the other. The key to solving for letters is to stick to your rules. Get rid of the junk, and you're going to have to write it sideways. It is always ugly stuff with letters. And then divide. And you may divide it by 2 or 3 things, but stick to your rules. Let's take a look. Before you move on to the worksheets, let me pose this strange looking problem. Let's say that you have something that looks like this. 3x squared t v pi r, I'm totally making this up, equals 10. Now, let's say we're solving for v. Let's do our thing. We draw our wall. Here's the question. Is there any junk? There's got to be some junk in there, but we know there isn't because there's no plus or minus sign. So again, this is void of junk. No junk, straight to divide. Now this is bizarre. We're supposed to divide by everything in front of v. So I'm going to draw my line. Fraction bar 3, the x squared, the t, and yes, also the pi and the r. Even though it's not in front, we're still going to divide because you know the commutative property, change order, says that I could, if I wanted to, write these things over on this side of the v. So, bottom line is we want to cancel everything out. So divide by everything in front or behind of the v. Whatever you write on one side, you write on the other. You don't have to have a space on the other side. But notice everything cancels out, and you're left with just v equals this mess. You are officially ready to get any letter alone.